This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by OWC, iZotope, Atom Audio, Lewitt, and Spectra 1964. In fact, you're hearing my voice right now on the Lewitt Pure Tube microphone through the Spectra 1964 STX110D mic pre and C610 comp limiter with iZotope, RX, Ozone, and Neutron, all recorded safely onto an OWC SSD and mixed on Atom Audio monitors. Please check out our awesome sponsors using the link in the show notes below. It's a great way to help support this show. Now get ready to rock.
iZotope's angle has been more on just helping enable the creator to just do whatever they want to do. Like, I want my master to just sound similar to this other master. I have like the CD or something, and then I got it on my computer. You can use Ozone's Master Assistant, which is machine learning based, and then get a similar sound, get a similar timbre out of being able to reference from that other track.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Atom Audio can provide all your monitor needs. Whether you're setting up a first-time home studio for recording music or podcasts, or a world-class full-size studio for professional mixing and mastering in stereo or immersive sound. Featuring the XART tweeter and custom DSP onboard processing, the A-series monitors will perfectly adapt to your studio. Get the Atom Audio monitors and subwoofers that are right for you with an extended 5-year warranty at atomaudio.com. Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound kind of weak or distant or lack punch and clarity? Well, I've got a gift to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding much closer to professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools, and the best part is that these mixing techniques work for you in any DAW, whether you're on Logic, Cubase, Studio One, Reaper, anything you can think of. If you're ready now to make your best record ever, then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. Yo, Rockstars. It's your host, Lid Shaw. I think this is the first time I've ever started the show with Yo, Rockstars. Welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Joakeem Gaston, Boston-born musician, producer, and photographer, growing up in Dorchester, Massachusetts, and a graduate of the Full Sail recording program. As a first-generation American of Haitian immigrants, Jaokeem was exposed to a variety of artists, music, and people. Hearing different languages and different genres were hand in hand in his upbringing. Through his networking skills he learned in high school, he was also able to land a job at iZotope, where he worked on the customer care and artist relations team. I met Jaokeem through his work at iZotope, and we actually got to connect and sit down and really talk about music a whole lot at AES 2022, when I got a chance to hear some of the cool vocal-featured groove-based music that he was creating. Jaokeem is both musically and technically proficient, creating music in the computer. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to learn more about some of the cool stuff that he learned over at iZotope, and also to just talk about all the ways that he's making his tracks. I use iZotope all the time, and a ton for this podcast, of course. But I also know that there are many other musical uses out there that most of you rock stars are going to be focused on, and that I'm always excited to focus on more in the studio. So please welcome Joakeem Gaston to Recording Studio Rockstars. Joakeem, are you ready to rock, my man?
I'm ready. I'm here.
Awesome, dude. Please tell me I pronounced your name correctly too.
Oh yeah, Jaokeem, you got it. I mean,
Jaokeem. Okay, all right.
I've gotten a lot of crazy mispronunciations of my name before. That you killed it. You crushed it.
Oh, good, man. I like to hear that. I like to hear that. That's my goal. So welcome to the show, man. It was great to connect with you at AES, like I was saying. Tell us a little bit more about like your, who you are. Give us the brief arc of your background in music and, the kind of stuff that you've been working on lately.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, the music definitely starts at like a young age. I mean, I came from like my family wasn't necessarily like the most musical, I'm not like a Thundercat or anything like that. But my cousin who I was growing up with, since I lived with my aunt like in my early childhood, he was a rapper, and then my uncle was a producer and dancer like in New York. And, they were always circling like around the house, like when I was living with my aunt in Dorchester. And my father, who was kind of in and out of my life, but he was also a musician. Like he played guitar all the time. I saw him on kit, saw him like doing a bunch of crazy stuff. And so, I had a lot of music influence just within my family. And also every Sunday, everybody's ready to go, start cleaning, and then you wake up and then there's compa playing, like, a bunch of Haitian music. So I have cool. a lot of, and as far as like early exposure to music, I have a lot of very fun memories with it.
How would you describe Haitian music? I don't know if I really can
Haitian music?
Visualize it.
I mean, rhythmic, colorful. There's a lot of joy and celebration within Haitian music. I think the palette, it's kind of the same thing as like, reggaeton or like cumbia, like, there's a lot, like it's centered like around like a certain groove.
Yeah.
And it's, rhythmic, colorful. That's what I would say.
What sort of instruments would you be likely to see?
Oh, that's a great question. And that's probably why I love synthesizers so much. There's a lot of synths in compa. Like the synth solo is like a staple. Like they're any large, like I would say probably like, 2000s and like back, like, you're going to hear some crazy like Roland Phantom, like synth lead patch or something like that, like in there. And like listening to that definitely helps, shape like the passion and energy I have for synthesizers, and especially within my music. So.
And what was the word you used? Like you quickly said a word that describes the Haitian music. Is there a term for it?
Oh, compa. Yeah.
Compa. So how do you spell something like that?
I'm pretty sure it's Kompa. Like if you were to look it up on Spotify or whatever your streaming service that you like, you would just look that up, and then you'd find the Haitian tunes.
All right, dig it. Yeah, maybe we can put together a compa playlist in Spotify and put that in the show notes too.
Yeah, no, big time.
All right, that you're on, man. You're on. That's your homework after this, Joakeem. Okay, cool. So then rhythmically, I mean, are we talking about live drums and bass and yes. percussion instruments, or are we talking about and then the synth is sort of like this melodic instrument that's being broken out to play over it, or is there a lot of programmed music? I mean, obviously, like everywhere you go in the world now, is a lot of programmed stuff too.
At least with the music that I was growing up with, it was both. Like there were like clear parts like within like the genres, I guess, like when it comes to compa, but there were sequence bits, mainly like different parts of the percussion. And then, there's live bass. There might be like an accompanying drummer or percussionist or something, like, just going in. Like there was a lot of really colorful musicianship like on those records. And having that exposure definitely made me it gave me the fundamentals to appreciate jazz. And like, that's what I got into. Like when I was in high school, I played jazz kit, and
okay, cool. So is that you playing drums on a lot of your recordings as well?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't have a live kit like anymore, like an acoustic one, but I have like a little like Alesis drum, like electric drum kit now.
Oh, nice.
But before that, I had like, it's essentially the equivalent. It was just something that was cheaper and not like a very big, well-known brand, but.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And I've definitely got questions for you about that. And it's cool to hear that you are, well, because sometimes when I listen to the music, I'm like, well, clearly this sounds computer generated sonically in certain
Yeah.
ways, but like the way that you put your music together and the grooves all sound way more organic than that. So
Yeah,
I'm excited
for sure.
to like learn more about like what your techniques are. Because I've always loved that idea of using a MIDI drum kit for creating beats and patterns in our studios, especially home studios where, I, like where you are right now, like even on this, Zoom video, I can see that it looks like you're probably in a smallish room. If you're living in a city, you can't always bother the neighbors and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of rock stars listening out there who would love to be able to create and compose without having to sweat that detail. Not everybody's got a studio like mine where you can just turn up an 8x10 Ampeg bass cabinet and not worry about it.
No, exactly. Yeah. I'm definitely very grateful for the space that I got.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's see. So you grew up around this kind of music and then you were studying jazz and primarily drums, or were you also like picking up all the other instruments and learning music theory as well?
Yeah. So I guess like the journey through high school was, somebody or my mentor at the time, his name was Rick Agler. Him and I actually kind of work together now, like at the Mattapan Teen Center. It's like a Boys and Girls Club location. So I went to the Boys and Girls Club like after school. Like that was like, my safe place, especially like in the city. And I went there, learned, or I was kind of forced, but like not really, because like I would like run in the room, talk to a bunch of people, run back out, just as like a kid, like from age 12 to like 18, I was just like always in the Boys and Girls Club. And then I think when I was about 13 or 14, Rick was like, hey, dude, you need to just sit down. Like, yeah, I need you to sit down and like learn something. If you're going to be in here, like you're going to have a plan. And then he was like, all right, learn guitar. And I was like, I don't know anything about guitar, man. Like, I don't even know if this is my instrument. And I didn't like it. And then I saw him playing drums one day, or at least teaching another kid how to play drums. And I was like, that's cool. I want to learn how to do that. And that's kind of where the passion for drumming started. I'm definitely not, I'm not a crazy drummer, but I still enjoy playing the drums. And that enabled me to like want to pursue that within jazz, because I was just getting into like, learning about the jazz greats. Like the funny thing about that room is that we had real book pages like pasted up everywhere. So like you would look up and then like Blue Bossa from the real book would be over there. And then you look to the left and then like, I don't know, Golden Lady or something would be like just up somewhere. And it was really interesting. And like, jazz was like physically around me, but then also the music was around me too, because the TAs that they had for like the Boys and Girls Club that I was at, like, were from Berkeley. So like, a lot of them were big jazz heads, and they were taking that influence from Berkeley and bringing it into the Boys and Girls Club.
Boston's got such an amazing jazz scene with Berkeley there. I don't really remember of course I remember the Boston Symphony Orchestra too, because I grew up in Boston myself. I grew up in Concord.
Oh, and look at that.
Yeah. So, and when I was in high school and I was learning how to play guitar, I was discovering jazz for the first time. And I used to listen to a radio show called Eric in the Evening while I was doing my, my calculus math homework. There's no way in hell I could do that now. I can't do two things at once like that. If I listen to jazz, it's like my brain just goes there. If I got to figure something out, my brain needs to go there. But that's pretty cool. And then when you went down to Full Sail, did you go to a music program there, or did you go to the recording program?
Yeah. So initially, because I wanted to be a producer. Like I was like, I love music, playing all these instruments. Because I got into playing kit. That was one thing. But then they were like, oh, we have somebody who's better than you at playing kit. So like play another instrument. I was like, okay, I'll play keys, I guess. And then I taught myself that. And I was learning music theory at the time. So learning chords and the different extensions and how to do that whole thing. And then I roughly picked up bass. But as far as Full Sail, wanted to be a producer. So I went down there for the music production degree. And then there was this guy and he came in the classroom and then he was like, I work 7 days a week. And I was like, what? You work 7 days a week? Like, what does that even mean? In audio? Like, where are these gigs? Like, how are you getting these? And then he was one of the head professors for the show production degree program. And I was like, what is that? What is show production? And then that's when I learned about, the live scene, Claire Audio, JBL, like, just learning about like the people who were behind like all these like big shows.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, that seems like that's, at least at that point, right before the pandemic, like that seems pretty stable. Looks like there's jobs like anywhere and everywhere, right? Like it doesn't matter like what part of the world I'm gonna be in. Like there's gonna be a lot.
Especially if you're focused on, the performance side of things and you're really into jazz, your instinct was to be where like improvisation is happening and players are playing together all the time.
Yeah. I mean, and after I made that decision, like with focusing on show production, like in school, then I was like, okay, like where can I go? Like where's like a small place that I can just be in and like kind of learn the ropes. And then right before the pandemic, I was gonna be like an assistant at this little jazz venue called Blue Bamboo off of like Fairbanks, I think in Orlando, if I still remember my Florida map in my head. But yeah, they were cool people. The guy was like telling me about like their DMX setup for like their LED lights and everything.
Oh, cool.
And
I just been learning a little bit about lights. I've got like 3 different DJ lights in the studio. I'm like, how the hell do you change the color on these things? And
yeah, DMX protocol is something else. A little 5-pin you plug in the back of the light. Yeah,
man, heavy stuff. Well, that's cool. So, and then I want to back up a little bit. So you're talking about the Boys and Girls Club, and we have a lot of wonderful resources like that here in Nashville too. The Oasis Center. There's some others downtown Nashville. The Nashville Public Library has a teen center, and I spent a lot of time working with a group called Southern Word, which actually brings poets into the public school system, and they teach poetry to the kids, and then they help them work out poetry slams. And then that also morphed into music production. So I've seen a lot of great opportunities for kids coming up through the school system here, where some of the schools actually have, laptops and Logic. It's always Logic. I even heard you talk about opening Logic to record yourself, But I know you've moved on to some other tools as well. So we'll talk about that. Yeah. But like, Logic seems to be ubiquitous for the schools, because I think schools are like, well, what? We can buy it once and it's got everything. Okay, awesome. We'll do that,
Exactly.
And then, the kids would come to the after hours program after school program, I should say, at the downtown library. And then sometimes I'd go down there and work with the kids and teach them. And then other teachers would come in. And so it's really cool. And it's great to hear your backstory of coming up through that and then really launching into a cool career. Now, how old are you now?
I'm going to be 23 this year. I'm 22. 22.
Awesome, dude. I love it. I don't know if you're the youngest guest on the show yet.
Maybe.
I gotta think hard on that, but that's pretty excellent to hear, man. So congrats on that. And I'm excited. I'm excited for you and all the stuff you're going to be doing. And you've already done a bunch of cool stuff. So you spent a few years over working with iZotope as well. Talk a little bit about, what is iZotope? What is kind of a overarching mission for that company and what you learned about helping people make records and music and podcasts and all of it?
Yeah. So iZotope is a plugin, they're an audio software company, and they're based in Massachusetts. Have like a really cool research team that's focused on how to keep creators, like both audio engineers, post-production folks, music producers, how to keep those people in flow, right? So as far as like iZotope, it's just all about enabling that creativity and just having people stay within the flow state and just not just being as inobtrusive to the creative process or just the technical process of just making, mixing, and repairing music as efficiently as possible, just to have you stay in that, oh my gosh, I spent like, an hour on this record and I didn't even realize it. I thought it was 10 minutes, and just, having you just stay in that state of flow, not worry about anything else, and not get stuck on like, why is this EQ node like not doing what I want it to do? What's going on? Just for you to just focus on the record, focus on the music. I like that. That's the overall
flow
goal.
state. Flow state is cool, right? Yeah, it's cool to hear your description of it. Those are all true things. I mean, you talk about audio repair. Why are we repairing audio? Did we not get it right in the first place?
Hey, I mean, it happens. Those mistakes are organic, and like sometimes it's a part of the process. Like recording hot to get like a certain tone, or recording like really low to get a certain tone, like proximity. Like all the different nuances and things that you can do. Like there's no right way, but sometimes your deliverable to a client has to be that right way, and like the way that you got the audio may not have been that way. So you just gotta make do, and then RX comes into play, or
exactly.
Play.
Well, and so it's cool because what iZotope offers are ways to fix things that might have been a problem that needs fixing, but then also ways to, quote, mix fix things where it's like, it wasn't really a problem. It's just that, do you necessarily want to spend your time trying to figure out all this internal workings of tracks blending together and stuff like that? Or do you want to let some of the tools do that for you so you can keep moving forward with the creative stuff, which is what you were saying, which I think is really hip. And then I know it's one of the products in the past that really hit me. And I mean, I hope I'm allowed to talk about it, but Spire Studio is one that I just got so excited about. It was really fun to just record song sketches and stuff using that. And again, what struck me was this attention to, wow, this totally kept me in the flow. Like, I didn't have to stop and start what I was doing. I'd just keep going. So we'll, Rockstars, hang out, stick around through the podcast. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff here, and we will definitely be getting deep into some iZotope topics. So stick around for that. Let me talk to you a little bit about your inspiration too. I like to ask guests to share either an inspirational quote or talk about somebody, musically or as a producer that really inspired you. I think you already threw out Thundercat as a reference earlier, but talk a little bit about that. Anybody that really inspires you in music?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think the list continues, and like it just grows, especially, with being in the artist relations world and getting to connect with those artists, or to connect with the engineers who help produce and create for those artists. So, people that influence me, I think my go-to most of the time is going to be Robert Glasper. I love his outlook and interpretation to music, and, the role that he plays within history, especially for music on the East Coast, coming from the East Coast, and, growing up listening to neo soul, jazz, R&B. I love his approach to harmony and rhythm, especially when he's playing with Chris Dave. I love the both of them together. I mean, they're just inseparable in my eyes. I love Justin Young. Justin Young's cool because like he's on Black Radio 3 that Robert just won the Grammy for like a few weeks ago. But Robert Glasper, Chris Dave.
I think I remember seeing him listed in the Grammy nominations. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I'm just trying to remember if I had a chance to work with Robert in my hay bale studio. We had so many people come through so fast. Yeah, there it is. I found it. Yeah, 2007. I got to record him at the hay bale studio in Bonnaroo. So that was pretty awesome. And what I remember about it, correct me if I'm wrong, I remember him bringing in a big weighted keyboard and like great kind of piano Rhodes tones. And I also remember I was like, wow, this really is like, there's a little bit of like, there's a good blend of like jazz and he might have even covered Kid A by Radiohead or something like that at the time. Yeah. So on Black Radio 1, I'm pretty sure the last track is like a cover of that track by Nirvana is Teenage Spirit. Oh yeah, it Smells Like Teenage Spirit.
It Smells Like Teenage Spirit.
It was before your time, young man. It was before your time. But I'll tell you, what's funny is Smells Like Teenage Spirit came out in 91.
Yeah.
And I had just moved to Nashville and I was driving around in my car. I remember literally driving across Vanderbilt campus, listening to Vanderbilt WRVU, their college radio station. And they played this, quote, new song that was just breaking. And I was like, and I
Wow.
just stopped, and I didn't want to keep driving at the intersection. I just waited and listened out the rest of the song and everything. And guess how old I was?
I don't know.
I was 23, man. I was about the same age as you.
Wow.
Right
Look
when
at
that came
That's
out.
a beautiful moment. I'm glad that you remembered that.
Yeah, I remember a few things like that. I don't remember everything. I might not remember your name if you're so nice as to come up and talk to me at the next time you see me, Rockstar, but I promise you I'm trying. Howdy, rock stars. I've got a secret to tell you about how I get a consistent sound mixing over 1,000 hours of recording studio rock stars. My secret is using iZotope, RX, Ozone, and Neutron on every single episode. Right now, you are hearing RX breath control, declick, declip, DS, deplosive, voice denoise, ozone multiband compression, neutron EQ, and limiting, all from iZotope. Go to iZotope.com/rockstars and use the secret code ROCK10 to get 10% off. Yeah, so Robert Glasper, and then so the neo soul thing, is that something, I mean, do you feel like that's an inspiration for the music you're creating, or do you even know where you want to go with your music, or is that an unfair question?
I mean, it's one of them, and I think there's a lot of things that I appreciate. You know, I also grew up like with the internet, so like SoundCloud was like a big part of me feeling that I could make music. Like, you know, there was a lot of YouTube videos even at that time. I mean, I started making music when I was 14, so that was like 2014.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I was like, oh, like what DAW do I start making music in? And then started using FL Studio because that's what all the videos were,
right,
like, you know, we're talking about. Like as far as like, you know, like hip hop or like record, just making beats. Like when you look up how do I make a beat, you know, at least at the time, like it was like Busy Works Beats, Andrew Huang, and like a bunch of other people. But primarily like when it came to like beats, because just the saturation of the videos, like when it came to electronic music, hip hop, and, you know, everything else, like if it wasn't Reason, it was FL. So I started using FL and just going in with that process. But as far as like the music that I want to make and how like neo soul fits in there, I mean, I just kind of want to just play, you know, and like if there's like a Mozambique groove that like I just figured out how to like play, then I'm gonna play that and then maybe write a song like with that groove. Or, you know, just also growing up again like with the neo soul palette, the Soulquarian crew and everything like that. I mean, I love Dilla, so like, you know, locking in on some Dilla grooves.
Check that off the bucket list of questions.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love Dilla, man. Like he's great. I mean, like reading his book Dilla Time, or the book about him that one of the, I think, wasn't an NYU professor?
I don't know. But I feel like I'm a recent, you know, discoverer of Dilla. I mean, I may not have discovered Jay Dilla any sooner than you did, you know what I mean? But when I did, and I started getting more into programming beats, which to me is often an experiment. You know, I'm more often working with a live band in the studio, but always fascinated by the electronic side of things and trying to mix and match all that too. And then I was like trying to learn like, well, how do you get that? How do you get into that whole kind of lazy groove thing, you know? Who else was I thinking of? That'll come to me in a minute. But you know, that just came up in a lot of different places. And it was cool to go learn about that and learn. And I'm hoping we'll learn more about that from you too, because you've got some really great lazy grooves in your stuff. So, and I hope it's okay for me to say that, because now now that you revealed that you were playing it on the kit yourself, maybe you're like, well, I didn't mean for it to be lazy, but no.
No, I mean, that's completely fine, because Jay Dilla was also a drummer. I mean, like, you know, he played in a lot of the things, like regardless of it being like on his MPC at the time. I mean, he's playing them in like that groove is from a human, regardless of it being flipped and, you know, warped and whatever it was like within the MPC. Like, you know, there's that human interaction, which is a part of the reason why I love Dilla's music so much, because he's taking something that would just be seen as a sequencer and like something isn't an even sequence, but like he's able to push and pull, you know, where the pulse is, and, you know, that influence, you know, like it just made such a huge impact like within hip hop. Because it's not that J Dilla was the only person doing that, but the way that he did it like was really impactful. So
yeah, well, what's cool about it reminds me of the early hip hop stuff too. So before we had, you know, automatic looping and lining things up on grids and all that, it was harder to do that stuff. Original hip hop was literally just 2 records, and you keep playing the break beat back and forth and keep the beat going. So there was a built-in performance and imperfection to it that makes it, that's like really, it's really appealing. You know, it's like there's something human about it. And it's funny because at the same time, I don't know, man, I think about that a lot. So we all live in a world now where you just drag and drop something from the right side to the, you know, to the track or whatever. Things are perfectly lined up. And it's easy to make music that's too perfect very quickly.
Yes, 100%.
But then I think about EDM production. And I think sometimes, some people look at that and go like, oh, that's just robotic. I look at it and I'm like, I love this shit. You know, I love that. I love hip hop. I love all that. And even EDM, which is like maybe the kick is really on the grid. When you study it, I feel like you discover that all the subdivisions are pocketed really well, you know?
100%. Yeah. I mean, you know, kind of not necessarily to go back to Dilla, but I think something that happened like in the UK that was really cool was jungle. You know, like you had like these guys like in their basements just coming in like with a bunch of samples, and also like using synthesizers at the same time, like using like those Commodore or like those or EMI like you know,
yeah
like
the emus and stuff like that too, right?
Yeah,
all that.
like, you know, all that stuff, and like they were making this music that sounded familiar yet like so not at the same time, like taking like drum beats and like going in, but then like warping and like, you know, taking the drum beats and making them like not recognizable, but then also like, you know, there were so many different ways that, you know, sampling and within like electronic dance music, because like it still kind of fits that umbrella, how, you know, it played on like the things being like, you know, on the downbeat, but also still feeling like very like sporadic, and you wouldn't necessarily be able to predict like what the next note was or like where the next hit was going to be. So
yeah. Did you ever listen to the artist The Streets?
The Street, that sounds really familiar.
Yeah, this is going back like 2004, 5, something like that. But those are some great records. They were described to me as garage 2-step or something like that.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's hard to keep track of all the different genres of beat making, but I love all the kind of funky, you know, the kind of the it's almost like when beats also becoming an assembly of junk sounds too. It's like things don't fall at the same time.
Yeah.
And, you know, snares land and there's like 5 things hitting at once, and all that stuff is really cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your music then. So what are some of the tools you like to create with now? I mean, are you still using stuff like FL Studio, or you using Ableton Live?
Ableton Live. I mean, they definitely have me by the throat. I've been making music solely in Ableton, I think, for the past 3, like I think probably 4 years. I think I've been making music in Ableton, like just in Ableton for the past 4 years.
Yeah.
And I've tried other DAWs and like I've tried other workflows. Like a friend of mine actually came over and like he plugged his computer into my setup, and then he was like, we're using Reason today. We're going to lock in and use Reason. And I was like, okay, like let's try it out. And it was fun. I mean, I think it's a different workflow, but you know, I just day in, day out, like what I'm going to be doing when I sit down and make music, I'm going to open up Ableton Live 11 and then I'm going to just make the tunes. But as far as other gear, like what's mainly in my rotation, I have my Juno 106, which is like my prized possession.
Classic.
Got that. Also from the Boys and Girls Club, funny enough, like it was broken at the time, and like they were like, like who's gonna use this? Like none of the kids were interested in it. And I was like, well, I mean, if nobody's interested, I'll be happy to take it. And
that was the Juno 106.
Yeah, actually,
wow.
It's right over here.
I thought you were gonna say like the Boys and Girls Club was giving away the old, vacuum tube PA system or something like that.
No. At least not at that
time. From
the
50s, That's great. The Juno is awesome, man. What are the things that you go to that for right away? Like when you immediately think, this put the Juno on it. Is it bass parts?
Yeah, definitely. I use it primarily like for pads, like in leads. Like, if I'm like going to do like a little synth solo, probably going to use my Juno. If I'm going to do like playing some chords to like help support like a Rhodes. There's probably a Rhodes in there too. Like I don't have a Rhodes, at least not yet. I'm really
the Juno
working on
does
that.
A Rhodes sound?
It actually does. I'm talking about like having a separate plugin like within like the music that I make. But there is a Rhodes sounding patch, and it's on the Group B Bank 6 patch 1.
Rockstars, take a mental note there. That's what it means. That's the language you speak when you're using actual hardware synths versus doing stuff with plugins in the computer. It's a totally different world. It's kind of fun though. And then you go buy MIDI cables, and you hook things up.
I got a whole system for that. If you want me to go through it,
tell us about how you hook up outboard synths to, because I know you're well versed in Ableton Live. I'm guessing that you maybe have like native instruments and Contact and sounds like that as well, especially from your time over at iZotope as well. But so talk about like, what does it mean to have a simple home studio? If yours is simple, I don't know, but where you're connecting both the digital world and these outboard synths.
What it means to have a simple one? I mean, as long as you have an interface and like you have a computer and like you have a microphone you trust, if you want to record, things like into the box, like into your computer, then you're kind of good to go. Like, you got some headphones that you can trust. Like that can be anything. I mean, like if you want to spend like $80 on a pair of headphones, or if you want to spend $300 on a pair of headphones, as long as you know what you're listening for, like, you know where to compensate. Like if you got, I don't know, like some Sony MDR 7506s, right? Like, the quintessential monitoring vocal microphone. Yeah. Like those headphones are like kind of bright. They don't have like a lot of bass. So if you're making a track and like those are like your go-to headphones, like, just keep that in mind, keep that profile in mind, and, just kind of like, that's what I would say. Like if you got like same thing, speakers in your room, and like, your room kind of does certain things to audio, you just got to keep that in mind. And like, you'll always be good, because when you have that mindset, you'll just be able to do anything and not make excuses for yourself. Like, oh, my room, it just sucks up low end, or my room blows up low end, and like, I can't properly make or mix stuff in here. It's like, nah, you just got to work with it. Obviously, you got to make sure that, you treat your room to some degree. I mean, like the panels that I have in my space that you can't really see, that are like on the wall, like I just made, I just like, I was with a buddy, and then I just, decided to just go to Home Depot, cut some canvas up, add like some extra like foam, I think from like a mattress topper, and then I just made them.
Nice. Yeah, well, anything is better than nothing. It all helps,
exactly.
And just use your ears.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about the stuff like the Juno 106, and you say hook it up, do you with an outboard synth like that, do you like to just take the audio jacks out and go into your interface and you just record it by hand? Or do you like to hook up MIDI and program it? And if so, how do you connect? What's the MIDI flow look like for something like that to work?
Oh yeah. So for my setup, this is how it goes. Like if I'm recording any of my synths, so I have a Casio CZ5000 as well, which is like an FM synth.
Nice. I got the CZ1000.
Ooh, that's a cool one.
It is pretty cool.
I like the workflow on that. I really do. And then I have a Studio Logic Numa X. I think that's just what it is. And it's like the 73 key version. And then I have MIDI out from that. So that's also plugged in through USB, but I have the actual 5-pin MIDI out going to my Juno, and then MIDI through going from the Juno to the Casio CC5000. And then the USB goes into my computer. And then if I want to send MIDI to anything, it's going to go through the Studio Logic keyboard, which is kind of like a stage piano.
Right.
And then that it'll be sent through that.
So the Studio Logic keyboard, we're probably, most of us are familiar with the MIDI controller that just has a USB cord that goes into the computer.
Yeah.
And then those keyboards often have a MIDI in and out on the back that you can continue on to the analog stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or analog or digital, just external keyboards. I'm doing something like that where I have a MIDI controller, and then the MIDI goes over to the Behringer semi-modular synths.
Okay.
But then those also have USB jacks on them. And one of the challenges we run into sometimes, Rockstars, you got to listen carefully for it. You'll notice that sometimes if you're running the USB cable to your computer, that you start getting computer noises and buzzes and stuff. Of course, we do have iZotope to take care of those, but that can cause noises in your audio from the synth. So sometimes you want to experiment with sometimes it could be better to use the old school MIDI cable controlling an analog synth and then just record the audio out rather than the the USB cable, because computer clocks they pollute the power and get in the sound sometimes.
Oh yeah, no, I've definitely had my fair share of just crazy literal beeps and boops that have come in that I'm where is this coming from? Where in the chain is what's the bad link, right? But from there, within that setup, it's literally just audio out into my interface, and the interface that I use, which is a little overkill. As far as talking to certain beginners and stuff, you don't need it. But I have an RME Fireface UFX, which is pretty old. I think it came out in 2013 or 2012 or something like that. But I got a good deal on it from a coworker, and it's been great. I mean, I don't have to worry about plugging cables out, putting them back in. I literally just, whenever I want to sit down and make music, sit down, open up Ableton. I want to record my Juno, enable that track, and then I'm good to go. And
it's cool. I think a good reminder about interfaces in home studios is, I'm going to put this out there, that the analog side of audio in and out of a box has been figured out a long time ago.
Yeah.
The digital side of it, and then the feature set of what a box can do and how fast things can interact with a computer and stuff, that does evolve with each new interface box that comes out.
100%.
But the reason I say that is don't be discouraged from using an older interface if you've got one, Rockstars. I mean, if you got an old one and it sounds bad, well, then it just sounds bad. But but there are plenty of older ones that sound great. For example, right now I'm using the Aurora 16s from Lynx Aurora 16s with my Pro Tools HDX, and they're older interfaces, but they sound killer. They do generate a lot of heat, though. I will say that too. So, there's it's always worth paying attention to the newest, latest, greatest, but you can get some great audio quality out of the older interfaces too. Yeah, no need for us to make excuses for them, right?
No, and that's true. And in regards to just talking to anybody, who's starting out, finding whatever your equivalent to Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace is, wherever you live. Because it's it's not the same thing for everybody depending on what country they're in, but just finding literally anything that's compatible with your computer that you have and just running with that for as long as you can is crucial. I mean, the first computer I had to make music, it was this Acer laptop that had I didn't realize when I first tried to make music, I had a completely different setup. I was on an Acer netbook, so it had one core, the CPU was one core, and it had 1 gig of RAM, and then I upgraded it later to have 2 gigs of RAM, and then that was able to run FL10, and that was my first exposure, I think, to creating music. And I was sequencing in little samples and stuff that came stock within FL, and like that enabled me to just plant the seed like in my head that, oh, maybe music is something that I could do. Maybe I can like produce music. And then, that evolved into then having an Acer laptop that I think had like a Core i5, 8 gigs of RAM, like 500 gigs, like, on the hard drive. And then from there, like I just made as much music as I could with that. I didn't even have an interface yet. I was just using like the onboard mic to record random samples, and then I would like chop them up and
That's
stuff.
great.
Like, and then I think I was gifted like this 16-bit like M-Audio interface. And then from there, I just used that for as long as I could. And then I went to Full Sail. They gave me a Scarlett, like with my package. I got a MacBook for the first time. And then
you're like, oh, this is what a studio looks like.
No, and that's true. Other than going to, at the time, Converse, because Converse is based like in the city in Boston. I think they're in like the North End or something. And I went to Rubber Tracks, which is like their studio that, was like state of the art. I think they even
Converse
had like
is
Dante.
In the shoe?
Yeah, Converse, yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they had a studio called Rubber Tracks. There's probably some stuff online so we can see like what it looked like and stuff, but I don't think it's active anymore. But at the time, like when I went, there were these engineers and like they were talking about like, oh yeah, like, we got a snake feeding through the walls, and then there's like an isolation room over there that has like a Dante setup to come in here. And then I was like, Dante, who's that? I have a friend. I think
Dante's Inferno?
Exactly. So it was really cool. It was really cool to have that exposure, and then to go to Full Sail and they were like, oh, here's our Neve board, or here's like our Trident or whatever. And then, get into the analog like world and learn about, signal flow and like all those, like how to do it and like how to go about it, what you want, how to get certain sounds you want out of it, and, patching and all that kind of stuff.
My studio is proudly powered by OWC, and I love how it's improved my workflow. OWC can connect all your audio work drives, trackballs, mix controllers, MIDI keyboards, audio interfaces, displays, or cameras so that you can work fast and focus on making your best record ever. Go look at the Mini Stack STX, Thunder Bay 4, or Gemini Thunderbolt 3 dock at maxsales.com/rockstars to find the perfect solution for your studio from OWC. So two questions. One is, what do you love about working with Ableton Live now? And then two is, when you learn signal flow, I remember learning that in school too, and it's great to understand the actual signal flow. It sounds like a fancy word, but really it just means how does the audio get from the microphone through the mic pre to the next thing, into the next thing, into the next thing, and finally out to the speaker. How do you feel like the stuff you learned about analog signal flow has helped you understand what's going on with like internal computer signal flow? Because there can be a lot of that you got to understand too.
Oh yeah. So Ableton, like why, or I guess not necessarily why, but what I really love about Ableton is just the workflow for like the sample, like the producer. I like the producer workflow in Ableton because to me it makes a lot of sense. And then if I want like the warping, like the audio warping and like how that works, being able to, put markers on a sample and then just snap it to a grid and then essentially just warp it into time. I mean, like Logic has flex time, there's flex pitch even like within Logic too, which is really helpful. But the workflow and how quick it is, like in Ableton, like since I've just been using it for a while, that's one of the go-to reasons like why I love using it is like the sample manipulation and like how easy that is. And then dragging in a sample like into a MIDI track and then it automatically opens the sampler for you. And like you can either slice it by the transient and kind of do like the Dilla thing. Like when you're playing it back, like to have it play back in time, like with whatever your project tempo is, or having it just, be like warp to be in pitch. So then you play it on your keyboard and then, you can change the warp mode if you want it to be beat, complex or whatever. Like that workflow is just with working with samples makes a lot of sense. And within the way that I like to make music, that's the most attractive one to me. If there was something like if for example, like if Bitwig like came out with like a new update, or like if Reaper came out with a new update, I'd be like, all right, that's interesting. Like let's try that out. But yeah, so like that's kind of like the reason why I love Ableton. It's just really on the workflow. It's really efficient to make music. And also, as far as like doing gigs, which I haven't done with my personal music yet, other than being a player for other people, Ableton Live, I mean, that was like its purpose, like, being able to like sequence your track live or play back, the sequences that you've already made just to do it. And it makes it very, very easy. And like that other view is important. But funny enough,
Ableton fascinated me right from the get-go. So I started experimenting with, I believe it or not, I still don't own like a full-size copy of it, but I played around with it a lot over the years. And, stuff like the fact that you could press play and then you could just like pop in and out of record. You could drag a plug-in onto something without it losing, without a hiccup in playback. These are things I'd love to be able to do in Pro Tools, but you can't. You gotta stop, make a decision, add it again. The other thing that was really amazing was you could just play around with all these different effects, and then you stumble on this cool sound. You make something happen, and then all you needed to do was just hit a button, and it automatically had captured every automation move and every MIDI thing that you did.
Oh yeah.
So it was like your sort of performance as a mixer or something was captured after the fact, which that blew me away, And then exploring the ways that people would use it for DJ sets, where you'd set up like an A and a B side.
Yeah.
And then you'd put your clips in there, and then you could kind of basically go for, you'd have a song could be assembled on the A side, and then fade over. What do you call it in DJ speak when you segue, I guess, right? From one song to the next.
Transition.
Yeah, transition. There you go. Transition from the B side, and keep the whole thing going. And then also the loop capability. It was really a great one for learning and figuring out how to just like build live looping tracks.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, and I always wanted to do stuff where like I'd have a band in the studio and the drummer could play, and then I just like grab that loop as the DJ in the control room. And I think we mess around with. We got like sort of working here and there, but I also figured out you could bring all your own instruments in as inputs, but then set it up where, with the hit of a button or a MIDI switch, you can capture a loop of any of those instruments you played. And probably that's like way more common all across the different DAWs now. But at the time, it was like really groundbreaking that you could do that stuff in Ableton.
Yeah, I mean, I love Ableton and then what they're doing. I mean, I actually have a push as well, like off to my left over here.
Yeah.
And that's been really fun, just to work with and whatnot. But also you said signal flow. That was like the other question.
Yeah, signal flow. Yeah,
signal flow. So with how I learned it or learned about like signal flow, like at Full Sail, especially like within like the live context, like it's definitely helped. I mean, understanding like the craziness that is like my space, like, it's like 3 keyboards. And then if I want to record bass in, or if I have a friend, they want to record guitar, understanding like proper technique as far as like how you would go about like executing just recording, and making sure that you're recording at the proper gain, you're not recording too hot or you're not recording too quiet, stuff like that. That's definitely helped me, like in regards of just making music and even making music on a computer. Like, the order that you put things in is important to like what the actual end result and tone are too. I mean, like if you're putting like, over, like you got like a compressor, and then like you're putting your overdrive before the compressor, like, there might be something within like how the tone like it's like changed and manipulated that may not be desirable, and like you might want to switch those around, like just to get like a certain effect. So yeah, definitely say signal flow is important, both outside of the box, inside the box.
Well, and it's interesting because, analog signal flow on a console, you really understand the cabling connecting one thing to another. And I remember the first time I saw a patch bay at my college studio, and I was like, oh my God, what the hell is that thing? That's so scary. Now it's like, then you learn, you're like, oh, it's just the inputs and outs. It's the backs of all the gear just brought to the front so you can see this stuff,
Exactly.
and hook it up. And then, but then, in the computer, you begin to learn that there's a whole bunch of things like that. I'm going to pull out my grumpy old man hat a little bit here for a minute too, and say that one of the things I appreciate about the world of analog or, real things, or like, working on a car even, for example, is there's laws of physics and how things go together. And once you learn that, it kind of makes sense. And then you're like, oh, I see how this connects and does this thing. And in the world of software, there's sort of like it's more like the law of what the hell did people do before, And so codes and how things get written and how things get connected inside the computer, they're like stacked on top of each other. And so it can get a little confusing sometimes. But once you learn it, it's really fascinating to understand, okay, this is the protocol that this app is using to talk to this app. Oh, this is like what is it called? An IAB bus or whatever for MIDI, where it's like, that's the, maybe internal application bus or something like that, where MIDI talks from one app to another through internal buses on the computer, right. And, all the new audio busing and things that comes out. So it's great to go learn that stuff and really put in the time to figure it all out. I try not to do it during a session. I try to do it during my fun time. And then I think a big fear is that also, like, am I spending all my fun time just learning how to hook things up instead of making a song?
Yeah, and the cool thing I think about making music on a computer is that learning can really just be room for you making or coming out with a tone that nobody's heard before. Just being able to, and that's what I think is really cool about the access to music now, is that you don't necessarily have to have that in the room knowledge of like signal flow and all those other things to just make cool music, as long as your ears are listening and are paying attention and not necessarily like, what things look like on the screen. Cool music will come out.
Yeah. What are some of your personal ways to, if you make a new sound, how do you like to capture that? Do you capture it and it's just going down as part of the song production? Or do you have another way where you capture things as future instruments you could make again to use in a production later?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm having like a little sound design like drill, right? Like, oh, let me like go through and just make some weird sounds on my Juno and like sample them, put them in the vault, so to speak, and just kind of keep them to where I can manipulate them and use them in a future track. There's that way to work with it. But then there's also, kind of like what you were saying, like, oh, I have a session I'm working on doing stuff, and then like, oh, this tone is exactly what I need. And then just recording that in. As far as like remembering patches, like that's the cool thing about having hardware synths. Like you can save it. But what I do sometimes, like if I don't want to mess with like, like the patches like that are on there, like the factory ones, like I just take a picture of the settings, because I know back in right,
because the Juno is a bunch of knobs and faders. You can actually take a photo of it.
Exactly, you can, right? And like I know back in the old skadoosh era times, you can
that's right.
You would have like that piece of paper, and then it would have, like you would just write down like exactly like what settings you have. So it's essentially the same thing. I mean, just a picture. So that's what I do. Other than if it's a plugin, just save a preset. You would just save like a custom preset then.
Cool, man. Thanks for the shout out to my record, Skadoosh, too, which of Rockstars is the soundtrack to this very podcast. And you're about to hear it right now. Audio introduces the all-new A-Series line of monitors, featuring the XART accelerated ribbon tweeter design, built-in DSP-based room correction, and speaker voicings, allowing you to customize your Atom Audio monitors to your control room. The A-Series will rock in any studio. Small studio spaces or immersive multi-speaker configurations are perfect for the A4V or the new A7V, the next generation of the the incredibly popular A7X. Mid-sized rooms and narrow spaces will love the low-profile A44H, expanding on the A7V sound, or the A77H, a true three-way midfield monitor delivering rich, spacious sound. And bigger studios will love the A8H, a three-way speaker and the pinnacle of the A series that delivers extremely accurate sound required for critical listening environments. Get the Atom audio monitors and subwoofers that are right for your studio with an extended 5-year warranty at atomaudio.com. Howdy, Rockstars. We're back now for the jam session, aka the second half of the show, and my guest today is Joakeem Gaston. I like saying it like I'm reminded of the tea kettle in Beauty and the Beast. Wasn't that, or was it the candelabra? Maybe I forget which one it was.
It's one of them. It's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really like saying your last name too. And we're going to jump right in and talk more about iZotope plugins. We'll talk more about Joakeem's songs specifically and things he's doing. So are you ready to jam, dude?
Let's do it. Let's jam.
All right. So let me start with some iZotope stuff. One of the tools that I use a lot in this podcast is RX.
Right.
So tell us what is RX?
RX. So yeah, RX is our audio repair, or is iZotope's audio repair like production suite. So like if it could be anything as simple as like de-essing and like, going in on a sample, like with the sample or recording, and making sure that you're getting sibilance out of somebody's voice, or like within that same recording, like if there's stuff going on in the background, being able to isolate just the vocal and take out like the ambient sound. So like that on its own, like is fairly complicated, and there's a lot of processing and trained machine learning tech that goes into making that possible and like easy for the user. But
yeah, probably helps to be right next to MIT when you're making stuff like this.
Oh yeah, I mean, the research team over at iZotope, like there's a lot of really talented people, like who've studied and like who've submitted to science, like with their research, as far as audio manipulation, audio repair, going in like there's a couple folks on the research team that have PhDs like within physics, that could talk your ear off about all the crazy things that they've studied and have taken that knowledge and put into the iZotope products.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There was a great video I did. Was it Alexi or Alexis?
Alexi, yeah.
Yeah. And when I had one of the AASs where he was talking about removing click bleeds from acoustic guitar and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's funny because like now we live in a time where it's like if you turn on YouTube, at least mine anyway, it's just like AI this, that, everything's all AI. And it's like, I think about what you guys, what iZotope's done. I'm like, they're probably like, we've been doing this for ages, you guys are late to the game. But
yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of really interesting players, like as far as AI, like within like the music process, because there's a lot of different angles to that. There's like the music creation angle, like as far as like having AI generate like a chord sequence for you, or AI being able to split stems for a track, so then you can take it and then put it into your track. So iZotope's angle has been more on just helping enable the creator to just do whatever they want to do. So, if that's, I have a reference track, like I want my master to just sound similar to this other master. And like I have like the CD or something, and then I got it on my computer. You can use Ozone's Master Assistant, which is machine learning based, and then, get a similar sound, get a similar timbre, like out of just being able to reference from that other track. So
I know we just jumped over to Ozone, but since you brought it up, let's talk about that.
Ozone. Yeah.
I used the mastering assistant feature recently when I was doing some mastering, and I was really blown away by it all. I think I learned that in some of the instances, it was good to like let it suggest some stuff and then, then grab every fader and kind of like pull it back, bring it back in, and find my own sweet spot for each thing. But one of the things was it sort of automatically chose a genre. I always forget which way I'm supposed to say it. My girlfriend's, she loves knowing exactly the right way to say something. So it's either genre or genre, but one of those two. And it would pick the musical style to inform the master assistant. But then I was learning recently from my buddy Megan Gohill was pointing out that you can also use like Audio Lens or these other tools to arrive at your own
target. Yeah,
your own target. So you could pick songs that you're interested in that aren't going to show up in the the general idea. So maybe talk a little bit about that. How would we pick some of our favorite indie rock songs, or just maybe we're just even picking our friends' bands as reference sounds, and then we're trying to have it master assist us toward that sound.
100%. So as far as like the normal workflow, like what you described, right? Like being able to take your track, run the master assistant, and then it kind of spits something out at you. The only reason why it's doing that is because, we have like thousands of songs like across like various genres that, we've, summed up to like be like, oh, this is rock, this is hip hop, this is EDM, so on and so forth. So there would be songs that fit within a certain palette or like within that certain genre that would have like a certain tonal profile. And then the master assistant, whichever it thinks your track is closest to, will put it to that. And like the new products, like that came out somewhat recently, which was Audio Lens, I think in December. The release dates are hairy because like, we see stuff way before.
And of course, this will come out later anyway. So
right.
We'll blow all the dates, rock stars.
So yeah, I mean, with Audio Lens, like you can use whatever platform you listen to music on, whether that's Tidal, Deezer, Spotify, YouTube, you name it. It's encouraged to use whatever you use, but the highest quality, so that you can get kind of like the full scale of like whatever you're listening to. And have that be funneled into Audio Lens. And like with using Audio Lens, you can get your own target curve. So you get a custom curve, which you could technically also have done like with a previous product, which is tonal balance control, to help inform like, what you want the master assistant or the mixing assistant in Neutron to like go for. But within Audio Lens, like, you can break it down like, oh, like there's a system of the down recording that I love and I want my track to sound like that. You can just go in, play it for a couple seconds, like in one of the louder portions or like within like the most dynamic parts of the song, take that as like a target curve. And then you can bring that in to Ozone 10 or to Neutron 4 and then have that be something that your track gets closer to just with having that target curve.
All right, cool. Now, if I remember correctly, Audio Lens is one of the free plugins, or it was free at one point. I don't know if it still is.
Yeah, temporarily.
Okay, all right, never mind. Yeah. But there are some
it
very
is free with purchase. So like when you buy something, at least at the time of this recording. So when you let's say like you bought Music Production Suite 5, or like you bought Ozone 10 on its own or a Neutron 4 on its own, you would be able to just buy it and then it would just be included. Like as soon as you register, the product itself, it would just show up in your account.
So in all fairness, I will mention the other ones that are, I believe, free still over there. There are, I think, when I was just looking, so Rockstars, if you're curious, there's a link in the show notes that takes you to iZotope.com/rockstars. And that will take you over to our landing page where you can also use a 10% discount coupon, RSR10, and get 10% off any plugin. But you can also just go there to just check them all out and take a look. And that helps the podcast as well. So thank you for that. But they do have the 3 plugins that I think were free to grab right away are Vinyl, Ozone Imager, and Vocal Doubler. And again, I don't know if that'll change by the time this comes out, but definitely worth going over and checking out because those sound really cool.
Oh, big time. I mean, I've talked to, especially when it comes to vinyl, I've talked to, I don't know how many producers, like just within the artist relations work, who've been like, oh yeah, that was on this track that like won this award or like charted this place. I was using vinyl on that. And
so tell us about vinyl.
So vinyl was actually one of the first, if not the first plugin from iZotope that you could get. And it's essentially like, do you want your track to sound like vinyl, or do you want like some instrument in your track to sound like all dirty and scratchy, like, and have like the characteristics of being recorded on vinyl? And yeah, I mean, you would just drag it in, use it. You can change like the speed, you can change the pitch fluctuation, like, the wow, like in Flutter, essentially, like, you can do all of that.
That's great
with the plugin, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I still use it like from time to time. And
does it give it the sort of the crunchy, a little bit of the crunchy analog vinyl distortion too?
Yeah, yes. So if you that's another part of it too that I don't think a lot of people tap into, because you can change your input and output gain. And so if you raise input and make it a little hot, take it down a little bit, like on the out, you can get some really, really cool tones out of vinyl.
Okay, cool. Let's jump back to RX for a minute.
Sure.
It has a lot of great features in it. There's sort of like an ever increasing number of little tools that are on the right-hand side. When you there's different ways to use RX, Rockstars. You can either use it as a plugin directly in a session. So if you're mixing in your DAW, you can just put it right on the track. Or you can open up the RX app and find a lot of those same tools over there, and you can work on the track directly. Some of the ones that I'll be using on this podcast, for example, D-Clip is one, which helps a little bit in case you get a little bit of distortion and overdrive. If Jaokeem gets really excited on his mic, or I do that for that matter, you hopefully won't even know that it's working, because it'll just be in there like smoothing it back out a hair. So that's a cool one. D-Click and D-Mouth Click, if I remember getting all the names right, is another one that's super useful. I don't know if we had any of these problems in the world of analog. I don't think we did, because nobody talked about it. But once we went to digital,
well,
all of a sudden,
it.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that was just a part of the process. You didn't have the option.
Or it's something to do with the way that digital translates all the little mouth noises as high frequencies. But now it's like, it's so much detail that, digital recordings, I don't even think I can't even fake it on the mic, because when I mix this, it's going to take it back out again. That's the big joke about talking about iZotope plugins on the podcast, is that like, if I try and demonstrate them, you'd be like, well, I didn't hear anything, hopefully. But it will instantly just take out all the mouth noises and clicks and things like that, which used to be just painstaking hours of editing. And you'd have to zoom in really close and take the pencil tool and then try and draw a perfect continuation of the waveform with your mouse, which sucks, and you can never really do it very well. I'm telling you, man, there were times where I was like, I think I need to get like one of those pen tablets and make that part of my studio, just so I can perfectly draw waveforms. So thankfully we don't have to do that anymore. And then of course there's like de-essing and de-breath tools and de-reverb and voice denoiser is really helpful. I use that all the time on the podcast.
Big time. Yeah, I mean, all the RX modules can definitely be used in a bunch of different ways. And another thing that some folks don't really realize too is that you can render something again. Like, like let's say like you have
do
like,
more than once.
Exactly. You can just render it. Like if you're using the standalone editor, or you're in Pro Tools and using RX Connect to then take your track and then funnel it into the standalone editor, you can just, if you heard something on the first pass and like it doesn't take out all the clicks that you necessarily wanted, you can try again if your settings aren't too aggressive, and then just render it again. I've done that more than a couple of times.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. Larry Crane, who's been a guest on the show multiple times, he really blew my mind talking about iZotope RX and how he uses it as his regular part of his workflow, where he's porting the track from Pro Tools directly over to iZotope in the standalone app. And then you get this, what do you guys call that again? Or what do they call
spectrogram?
It? Yeah, spectrogram, where you can see visually all the sound as colors, and, from the lowest frequencies down on the bottom to the highest at the top. And it's really mind-blowing to see the music laid out like that. And and you begin to understand, it really helps understand the music too. So for example, even a human voice, you see the fundamental of the voice, and then you see all these stripy lines above it, and you're like, oh shit, those are the overtones of my voice in that moment, you know? But, you know, stuff like S's and ch and s and all those sounds, who knows, maybe you didn't hear it, rock stars, just now when I demonstrated it. But those sounds that can be so challenging, you know, I'm going to use the plugin on a long form thing like a podcast, because it would take ages to go through in the app and do every little treatment, every little sound.
For now.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. But like for a song, you know, when you're talking about a 3.5 minute pop song, for example, it's super doable to just load up the song and really carefully go through every detail if you need to make sure that you give the stamp of approval on every edit and cleanup and everything like that. So, you know, I did a mastering project recently where I still didn't like the way the S's were sitting in the final version. And I just loaded the songs in there and just carefully addressed every S until it was like I could dial it in. And it was fun because I found myself able to do things like highlight the lower portion of the frequencies of an S and de-S it, but leave some of the very upper frequencies still in there because I felt like it was making it sound like the S was at the right volume, but still had that clear top end. So like really cool ways to really carve out the sound and make sure that your vocals or whatever else you're dealing with sound right to you. How about for you? What are some of the ways that you've really enjoyed using the standalone RX app?
Yeah, I mean, essentially like for the same thing. RX is a great powerhouse as far as like, you know, taking out like those little, not necessarily wanted parts of like vocal recording, especially like with working with my own music. I mean, you know, if I'm recording with like this dynamic mic and then for whatever reason I got the gain like a little too high and like you're hearing everything in the background, I can go in RX and just isolate things the way that I need to isolate them. And with doing some of like the random, very sporadic like video portion stuff, like ambience match is really cool. Just being able to, you know, not have like a huge shift between two clips because they were recorded.
You're talking about when you're doing video, if you're doing sound for video.
Yeah, with doing sound for video, like, you know, using ambience match and then just not having like that crazy shift between those two clips and like being able to kind of match them up so that the room tone is similar. And
now could we do that within a single track? So for example, let's say we punched in vocals and then later we realized that like one part of the vocal sounds different from another. I remember somebody was talking recently about, I think it was Larry again. Shout out to you, Larry, about the singer on a live recording was leaning in and out of the mic. So the proximity effect was changing. And so he just went and he adjusted up the proximity where it was missing. So it sounded more constant all the way through the same vocal.
So there's that, like there's ambience match, and then there's also dialogue match, which is a little different. And like it's mainly meant for people who do dialogue in post, but you could also technically use it for that too, because there's, you know, as far as like getting like the correct characteristics, like as far as like the reflections in the room, like that's something that you can also adjust within dialogue match, but that's a separate product. It's not necessarily included with RX. It is included with the post-production suite. Like if you know, like if that's the way that you choose to buy iZotope plugins, but that's something that's really geared towards stuff like that.
Right. Right. Well, there's definitely, you know, there are some different needs between people who are making music and people who are doing the film and TV stuff, because they're, you know, in that world, you've got some really strong needs that might not matter in the same way in a song recording. But what about this, man? Have you become aware of any musical artists that, like in the same way that autotune arrived and then along came people who kind of broke autotune and then it became this signature sound. Have you started to learn about anybody who's making signature sounds breaking RX yet?
Oh yeah. So there's this guy, his name is Luke. And he's in this band with his sister and like some really talented people called Tennyson. And I got hip to them just because of SoundCloud and like listening to like a bunch of producers, like making really weird abstract electronic music. But his music stuck out to me a lot because he was making music that was very jazzy, but then it was almost like fusion. Like there was just all these different tones coming out and just attacking you, but then like also lulling you at the same time. You know, there was a lot of stuff happening. But Tennyson, like that's the group. But Luke from Tennyson, he always streams all the time. And you know, he shows his workflow. And then I saw him go into RX and he was changing the quality or the perceived quality of chords by going into the harmonics and then just taking notes out.
Wow.
Like he was going in and isolating different parts like in the spectrogram and just taking them out because he didn't like the way that it sounded.
So
like,
if he didn't like the voicing, he just sort of changed it afterwards.
And he would just change it. Like that to me was nuts. I've never seen anybody use RX like that. Cause like, you know, you can go in and like if there's like some random tone that like came out of nowhere or like, you know, you got guitar and like you want to take something out, you can go in the standalone editor in the spectrogram and like select which part of the harmonic series that you want to take out. And like you can do that. Like that's like a supported part of the workflow. But to go in and change the quality, that was cool. You know, I've never seen somebody go that far and like be that diehard about it.
Now, what about cutting and pasting inside the RX timeline? Do you see people doing that and like actually like moving chords and parts around and editing there?
I've seen people like cut and paste like within RX, but as far as like chords, it's like having that have like a harmonic thing to it where you're kind of using RX creatively, not necessarily. It's mainly just been like that one workflow that I saw on a stream on Twitch.
Nice.
With
So tell us about Twitch. We briefly mentioned that before all this. I'm still trying to understand what the hell Twitch is. As far as I know, it's where, you know, video gamers stream live stuff, but it seems like there's a growing audio component to, you know, production component to Twitch as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, Twitch, you can just use Twitch as like a live streaming platform for anybody. You know, there are people who are talking about their life. You know, there's podcasts that get hosted on Twitch and then they just stream as if it's like a TV show. Or, you know, there are people there, you know, who stream games. There are people there who are literally just streaming their life. Like there's like an IRL portion to switch to Twitch, and you know, like just walking around.
So that's all fine and dandy, but we want to know about the studio part. So are you seeing anybody who's actually like making music there and doing studio tutorials and things?
So like Lido, another artist that I also found through SoundCloud, like at the time, he's like, you know, big producer, produced for a lot of different people. He was with Halsey for a little bit, and they made like this really interesting like relationship album called Everything, which I thought was really cool. I enjoyed it. Love Lido's music a lot. And he would just show what he did, like his workflow through his productions and mixing decisions that he's done on various projects, like his own, other people. And like he would just go in, because I think he uses Cubase, and like he would just show like all of his routing, like the way that he chose to like put, you know, different compressors or different EQs, different effects, like all like his entire chains, like for whatever he's using within that track. And you would just ask him like, oh, what effect did you use at like 2 minutes, 30 seconds, like on Everything or something like that, you know? Then you would just see him do it. And like that's being not necessarily replicated, but that interaction like with producers and engineers is happening, you know, like for example, Mixed by Ali, or just Ali, who has engineers, like the platform to where engineers can be readily available for, you know, content creators or producers or not producers, but for artists in general.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people like him, you know, are just kind of unveiling the curtain. They're like, oh, this is what I do. These are the exact plugins I use, or this is the exact outboard gear that I use. And they're physically able to show you what they're doing in Pro Tools or what they're doing in their space, how they're miking things, how they're doing things. And it's that's another part of Twitch that's starting to become like very attractive for a lot of different people. I mean, like Kenny Beats, who's probably one of the biggest producers like within that space and within his social media presence. I mean, like he's been doing that, and like he has like one of the biggest music production Discords, if not the biggest one. That's kind of an extension and parallel to his Twitch. So
And
Yeah,
what was his name again? Kenny, who was it?
Kenny Beats.
Kenny Beats. Yeah. And then, so you brought up Discord. Again, what I love about this conversation, I'm 56 now, you're 22. So you're talking about Twitch, you're talking about Discord. Help some of us old guys understand like how to even interact with those if we want to go check out that world at all. Like where is Discord really helpful in creative production kind of stuff?
Yeah, so you can kind of think about Discord as just another social media platform, but it kind of takes what's cool about Reddit and like what's cool about Facebook groups and marries them together. So, the same way you would be able to have a subreddit and then it didn't necessarily need, like your username didn't necessarily have to be your name. You could have that, but then you could also have the really interactive community portion and like, knowing certain people that you would have like with Facebook, and then, Discord essentially marries the two. And then you can also chat with people like just within, the threads and chats. And then you could talk to people, you could share your screen. So like when people want to collaborate, like they're like, oh, I'm going to share my screen and show you what I'm doing like in FL Studio or Ableton. And then like, somebody can see that, hear it live, and then give feedback. And, so there's a really interesting community. There's a community for every niche on Discord now. I mean, they're like in the EDU space, like education, like all across the board, whether that's like public schools or colleges or, different little institutes and whatnot, they're all using Discord, or not all of them, but all of those different areas like within education are using Discord and adopting it like into their workflow.
Right on. So maybe we just go there and search home studio or recording studio, and that's a good starting place.
There'll be a Discord. Yeah, if there's somebody that you like on the internet, like they might have a Discord, or they might have like a fan Discord like created for them, and like you can meet other like-minded people who like what you like.
Sweet. If you are mixing music, podcasts, or audio for video, and you want it to sound amazing, then iZotope has got your back. With RX, Ozone, Neoverb, Nectar, and Vocal Synth, you'll have a collection of powerful apps and plugins that will help you get a professional sound in no time. Whether you're looking to clean up your vocal recordings with RX, master your tracks with Ozone, or add depth and ambience to your mixes with Neoverb, iZotope is your magic wand for awesomeness. Plus, with Nectar and Vocal Synth, you can easily add creative effects and unique textures to your vocals and instruments. From subtle mix enhancements to extreme sound design, iZotope takes your music and podcast productions to the next level. Go to iZotope.com/rockstars and use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off. Well, let's keep moving forward on RX. So Repair Assistant is one of the new features that was pretty cool too. So tell us what that is. So it seems like it's that like having the little robot in there helping us, get from point A to point B.
Yeah, so within RX10, the really cool thing was that the Repair Assistant got a facelift, and now it's like its own plugin, essentially. Like you have a macro control over, unfortunately, I don't really remember the specifics, but like you have a macro control over the basic things that you would really want to work on. So like, sibilants, you can take that out like with DS. You got voice noise, which is doing a variety of different things to make sure that all the other unwanted sounds like within your voice, you can get out. There's dehum, and then all of those you can interact with and control through like a macro level controller instead of like going in and like trying to figure out like, the individual parameters. So the AI portion that you would have like with Ozone or Neutron and like really just honing in on just getting like the desired tone out of what you want, like out of like the source audio, you also get now with the Repair Assistant. So you can just go in and like, choose like, oh, I just want my vocals to sound like good and clean. Repair Assistant, it hears that you have dialogue and that there's kind of like some random stuff going on in the background. And then it'll just kind of give you that base level edit to just keep you moving forward. It should just keep it pushing in the repair process.
Yeah, so that's cool. And for me, I think what helped it really click for me was realizing that the way that all that stuff is designed now is you load a vocal in, for example, you hit the repair assistant, it comes up with a whole bunch of settings that ballpark it for you. But what's scary sometimes to us is this thought, like, we've all seen, I think a famous one is the way Apple would update software, and then people would be like, oh, they took like this app that used to do stuff and they turned it into iMovie or whatever. Yeah. But what's cool about the way you guys, the way iZotope does it is they give you this quick and easy version, but all you have to do is just click one button and it kind of like opens up the hood and you're looking at all the settings, and you can go and adjust the same things in the normal detailed version. You can make the adjustment, or you can go to the assistant view, which gives you this one single easy slider. So I think that was what really helped me out, was realizing it's not two different worlds. It's the same world. It's just different views of controllers.
Exactly.
And if you ever used a virtual instrument, Native Instruments does stuff like that too, where it's like, Contact is this incredible sample player that you can create crazy sounds in. But when you want to have a simple way to control the sound, you just create this whole skin and screen with knobs and stuff on it. And each knob controls a bunch of stuff under the hood. So I think that was pretty cool. And as you pointed out, the assistant stuff shows up in Ozone, shows up in Neutron, right? Mm-hmm. Where are some other places that the assistant features show up in iZotope stuff?
Also Neoverb, which is like the three-ish algorithm reverb plugin. So there's some cool tech in there. Like that's definitely like heavily inspired like by the exponential audio plugins. And it's basically all like funneled in to like this really easy to use reverb plugin. So you can press that assistant and then you would just go in like, oh, I want something that sounds really dramatic. Take the dramatic slider, throw it all the way over there. Oh, I want something that sounds really realistic. Take the realistic slider, throw it that way. I want something that sounds big. I want something that sounds small. You can just play with those like macro or like the assistant like view sliders to just get, the tone that you want. And then if you want to make those like really detailed adjustments, like you said, you just press a button and then you'll be able to see all of those individual things.
Yeah, so. Neoverb is great. I started using it for some of the mixes I was doing. I was using it as like kind of my snare reverb. And I loved the fact that you could so easily move things around and try very different sorts of sounds for the reverb. Because a lot of times when I'm dialing in things like a drum reverb, I feel like I'm like searching for that kind of sound, but I don't know. It's like one of those things. It's like I'll know it when I hear it, but I don't know how to describe it beforehand.
No, right, and using that like other language, like with audio, I think is really important. Like oh, I want something that sounds punchy. That's what an artist would probably tell you in the studio, and then like you would just, for example, like with Neutron, you can just add punch. Like if you want something that sounds tight, you can just make it more tight, I think using that kind of language and making audio mixing and creative audio decisions, like incorporating that language more so makes it more accessible.
Yeah.
Because not everybody needs to know like, oh, this is parallel compressing my drum bus or something so I can get the tone, which is important to know. I mean, having that detailed and knowledgeable view and understanding of audio and processing is important, because then you can get closer to having a more detailed style and like really understanding why you like the things that you like and how you get there. But just the getting there portion is way faster if you just like, oh, more punch, less punch.
As studio people, I mean, we might like to understand how electricity works and how the power comes in the outlet. We might like to understand what a balanced power system is that's isolated, but we might also just like to plug the gear in and start making some music, So exactly. I think it's great to have both versions of the tool. And then I've spent a lot of time hunting for the right reverb sounds on drums, and I kind of hate it. It's like really frustrating, and it's like, a lot of times it's like none of them sound great. So when I discovered that with Neoverb, you could just put it on there and sort of like stay in the same plugin, but like search around for different kinds of reverb sounds until I found something that fit that track. I thought that was super cool. I guess the one thing that would be cool for Neoverb to include in the future would be compression as well, because that's like one of the things I always put, and it might be built in there on a certain level, but I always found that like, the secret to a good drum sound was finding the right verb for the snare and maybe for the kick, and then slapping like the BF76 compressor on after that or something to kind of splat it out. So it might be cool to like dial both at the same time. And then of course, Stratus 3D, iZotope acquired Exponential Audio, and I had the pleasure of meeting and interviewing Michael Carnes talking about Exponential and R4 and all that stuff. Great guy, and he's old school, and he's OG when it comes to reverb for sure.
Yeah, no, literally.
Yeah, so
he is the OG.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us a little bit about Exponential Audio and Stratus 3D. What's your experience with that?
Not too much direct experience, but I think the place that they hold like within accurate representations within spaces and like replicating spaces, like all the math, like with any of the exponential audio products are just top notch.
Yeah.
Like it's great. And also like, with the updated UI too, like they also like fit like within like the iZotope ethos and like how things look now. And, it's great. It's great to be able to use like a reverb that works, that's supported, like within like the surround context too. Like I'm not personally using that, but I know there's a bunch of engineers like, all around, especially like, with like this whole spatial audio thing I'm not going to speak too much on that as far as like what I think about it, but definitely really cool that, we have reverbs, like multiple, that are able to help that workflow. Not necessarily Dolby Atmos, like, because it's not Atmos certified, but just having really solid immersive.
Yeah, well, Exponential Audio, what struck me about those plugins are they're great places to go for when you really need a very like realistic reverb that's a plate or a room or a chamber or a church or whatever. And I could absolutely see them being must-haves when you're doing, film and video mixing where you have to recreate the sounds of environments.
Yeah.
But they're very cool for creating sounds for audio mixing too, especially when I found myself mixing like a jazz album or something like that, where it's like I needed to find natural spaces that were bigger than my studio, my home studio. And a lot of us might find that the treatment in our home studio that's helpful is to create kind of a deader sound so we don't hear the wall reflections and stuff. But then when you're doing albums that need to sound like they were in a bigger studio, it's great to be able to dial those in and find those natural sounding bigger spaces that don't sound fake, when you're mixing it.
Yeah.
And another thing that was really hip about the way the original Exponential was designed was he understood that you needed to be able to flip through the reverbs really quickly, because you wanted to just like, with just the right and left arrows, you can just go until you find something like, oh, that one's cool, favorite, favorite, and then just pick them. So that kind of stuff's really, really hip. It's like treating reverb like hunting for samples, Yeah. You don't want to be slowed down when you're looking for the right sample, right?
Like you need to stay in flow.
Stay in that flow. All right. So I'll just give a shout out to a couple other things I haven't even used yet in RX. It now has like a text generator feature, so it can actually put the text up at the top of the screen while you're to go along with the dialogue. If you're doing long spoken dialogue, and speaker detection, it knows who's speaking and stuff like that. Very wild stuff. And I think there's like, you'd think that I would have already figured this out for the podcast, but there's voice leveling features in there, which will take a long voice dialogue part and go in and redraw the waveform, or go in and redraw the volume curve to try and level it out and make it more consistent all the way through.
100%,
so very cool stuff. ozone, let's see if we want to say a couple more things about that before we move on. I remember first discovering it because I was searching around the internet. I was like, how does Skrillex get that sound? Because I was like way into dubstep. And then people were like, oh, Skrillex, he does all his mastering in something called ozone. I was like, oh, what's ozone? This was years ago. So do you find that ozone is still a big go-to for EDM producers and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, ozone is a mastering suite. Like you can really, if let's say like Desert Island and like, you didn't have any other plugins and like, you didn't have something that like was like your vintage style limiter, like, you didn't have something, you just didn't have like anything else. Like you just having ozone would not be in any way a detriment to your mastering workflow because like you have like kind of every area, like, or no, essentially every area like of the mastering process. Like, you can have your pre and post EQ, like you can, which aren't, doing crazy adjustments, like the amount that you're able to attenuate and notch out, is smaller in comparison to like a regular EQ,
right,
which is helpful
more for mastering. Yeah,
exactly. Because it's more for mastering.
Yeah, I always find when I'm using the EQ and ozone, I just have to really, it looks like I'm cranking it,
Yeah. So there's that. Then obviously you got your compressors and there's different styles. A lot of the really cool things about the research team is that there was this guy, Kurt Werner, who did like a lot of the math. And, he was like really like a really integral piece of making sure that, the analog emulation parts of ozone, because it's still within it. Like there's like the vintage style limiter, there's the vintage style compressor, all that stuff. And he was really important to make sure that was happening accurately. And like when people think about vintage tone and like, for example, like with saturation, like the exciter, all that stuff, when people think about the characteristics of what make that sound, like he on an actual schematic, scientific, physics-based level was able to go in and like find like, okay, what are like the most commonly used compressors? Like what are the most commonly used, like just like literally anything like within like working like with outboard gear. And then he went into those schematics, broke them down and like found out like all the different pieces, the capacitors, resistors,
wow,
all the components, and then was able to recreate them like, through code. And then like through that, took that, came together like with the software engineers and like was able to give a product like to the consumer to just be able to create and like get towards the sound without necessarily having to know like, oh, that's the 1176. Like I can hear it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's, like you could just vintage compressor tone. Do you want solid state? Do you want whatever? And like all those things are also present in other iZotope products as well. But, to keep things about ozone, that's definitely like another cool portion.
Yeah, that's super cool. Some of the components that are in there, we talked about the master assistant. Of course, you've got an EQ, you got a maximizer. So there's a great way to get your master levels plenty loud. The master rebalance is a really cool feature. I remember when that first appeared. Give us a quick introduction to what that is all about, and like, what are some use cases for the master rebalance? What does it do? And how might we get excited about it?
Oh yeah. So I'm gonna give you a scenario. So like, let's say like, the mixing engineer, like, or the artist themselves, like they just throw you this 2-track, right? And you're sitting there, you're like, oh wow, this actually sounds pretty good. There's not really much room, there's not much stuff I need to do, but man, these vocals are coming in really hot. Like, as far as like what they're saying they want of me as a mastering engineer, like I really just need to take these vocals down a peg. But like I love everything else. I just need to take it down a peg. With the master rebalance, you have like the different groups like within the track separated. Yeah. So you got your bass, you got your drums, you got your vocals, and like other miscellaneous sounds like, keys and, all that other stuff. And you can go in and either boost or take away, those like those different groups like of sound. So essentially, like, you can kind of lightly mix and like lightly like boost or take away, those different groups, and having that like in the mastering process is kind of crazy. I mean, like you kind of, you have like a little magic little magic tool that enables you to like boost things without necessarily like just boosting it. I mean, it's machine learning based, so like it's going in and finding, let's say like we're talking about the vocals in that scenario, like it's going in and finding like where the vocals sit in the track and then just boosting those parts of the track that you're working on. So.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, like, and there's just so many times where, you print a mix and maybe you didn't quite get the vocal level right or something like that. I mean, what's cool about this is, rockstars, think about using this digital tool. I mean, we sort of automatically think about being in the computer, but think about it. You could be actually creating music on a 4-track and a mixer or something like that. And the things that didn't quite work out in the 2-track mix, now, once it's back in the digital space, you actually have more control over things like your drums impacting the level of the bass, the vocals, the guitars, and the other instruments on the sides.
Yeah.
I think about widening, and sometimes in mastering or to make our stuff more exciting, we might want to use the widening feature slightly. And then, but when we widen things, sometimes it drops the center in level too. And so it might be hip to be able to both widen a track, but then like bring the vocal back up to the level you want and stuff like that, or maybe even the kick. I don't know what happens if you widen it and then bring everything back up in the middle. maybe it'll sound awesome. Again, we're looking for ways to break this stuff and find the cool new sound, right?
You should. I want anybody and everybody to like go in and break stuff. I mean, like that's what gets like cool tones. That's what pushes the fold. That's how we get cool sounds, So
now what about this? You got these labels in there too. You got vintage comp, vintage limiter, vintage tape, vintage EQ. I was always, when I saw that, I was like, that's cool. But I was like, what's that all about? What if I don't want vintage? What are some thoughts there?
Yeah. So, in regards to compression, like I guess with like the vintage example, like if you're thinking about like what are those things, like exactly like what I was saying before, like with the research team, like they were just trying to figure out like what are the most commonly used, outboard, like when it comes to outboard gear, what are the most commonly used compressors, EQs, limiters, that people are gravitating towards and why, right? And then going into those, breaking them down, figuring out like what about the components like gives it the certain tone that people really look forward to, and then just did the math, just did the code to kind of give you like an all-around example of like what people are looking for, and how like you can use it, interact with it, play with it the way that you would see fit.
Okay, cool. So these are all, so if it says vintage, it essentially implies a study of real existing analog counterparts and stuff like that. Okay, 100%. Great.
Yeah. Like it wouldn't just be doing like, like pulling like a low pass filter and making it sound like lo-fi kind of thing. It's definitely a lot more complicated than that.
That's cool, man. Actually, you know what? Let's take that as an opportunity to jump back to one of your songs really cool, briefly or quickly. Which one was it? Oh yeah, it was on What's on Your Mind was one of the ones.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce it. Luce Mentis or something like that.
Luce Mentis. Yeah. Mentis. One of the
Is that now? So is that you singing on that track?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's me.
Groovy. Well, one of the things you did, which I love, is this classic talking about low pass. You did the filter sweep thing as the pre-chorus, sort of going into the chorus. Yeah. So talk a little bit about like how'd you do that? What is that trick, and how could we explore that in some of our production?
Yeah, so that's I'm so happy you asked about that, because it was really, really simple. So since I was using Ableton, I could have just used like the regular like EQ8. To do that and just kind of, take like a high curve or a high octave like curve like EQ, and then just roll it out or roll it in, to get that like low pass sound. But I just took auto filter and then I didn't have the like the frequency, like which would be like going like, back and forth like really fast. I think I just had it like really low, automated it, and then just had like the low pass filter just come in and then like really quick and then like come back out to fade back into the and so just like, the little vamp section that I had like in that track. It was fun.
And so if I think this kind of I think that whole move stems from the time of DJs with a mixer that has a low and a mid and a high EQ, and that's it, and
that's exactly it.
Like DJs would, if you're mixing two records together, you just basically take the low EQ and cut all the bass out of one of the records so that you don't have competing kick drums until you're ready to like flip to the next one or whatever. And then you could do the same thing with the highs. You could, if you wanted to give the effect of, it's just such a simple move. I remember Madonna had that one on like Hey Mr. DJ or one of those tracks that's like this whole classic sweeping up of the high frequencies. I want to do it on a rock song,
You should go for it.
Just want to filter the whole song in and have it land on the chorus, and it's like, there's the high end. But so do you think that people are typically doing that on the master bus for the entire track, or do you think they're often doing it on like the vocal doesn't have the effect, but the instrumental, everything else does? Like, what are some ways to set up your routing to experiment with this?
Yeah, I think so. For me, since like, the way that Ableton is organized is not necessarily with like the common engineer mindset, right? Like, like having like different buses for things. Like I just had groups. So within Ableton, to kind of explain the workflow a little bit, like instead of having like a subgroup or, like, your sub mix, like so to speak, like you would just have like your groups, and like that's kind of how your track is organized. I wish I could put like a screenshot or something like for people to see what they're going to be listening. So for me, the tracks that I wanted affected, I had the filter like as like one of the only plugins like within that group. And then through one automation and like drawing in that one automation, like I had all of them affected. So all of the tracks that I think, because I'm pretty sure it's like, it's the drums and the bass, and I think there might be like a keys patch in there that I had affected. I just had all of those routed into the same group. And then with that one EQ sweep that I was doing and with the automation lane, they all got affected all at once. So that's the way to do it. There's definitely other ways to go about it as far as like routing. Like even though you have a bunch of things like in the same group, you can technically still have them route to a different group and then have them be affected in a different way. But then things, in my opinion, get a little hairy. But if you know what you're doing, like where you're pointing what to where, you're fine. It's all good.
Yeah. I mean, in Pro Tools, one of the ways for doing stuff like that kind of easily is, you just grab a bunch of tracks and then just folder track them.
Exactly.
And make it a routing track. But one of the frustrations is like, for me, ideas like that come up when you're already deep into something and you've got all this complexity going on underneath already, and you get nervous about messing it up, So it's like, I got a mix going. Am I really going to change the track routing for like 20 tracks all at once? I'm terrified I'm going to like blow it or something. It would be fun if the DAW manufacturers really just figured out how to make it like you don't even think about it. You just drag and drop, and next thing you know, they're all routed through a new thing, and you can filter it and not lose your original routing underneath. But some of the ways that I've done like flanging a whole band in a mix was some folder track routing like that. And then I think I would just engage just bypass or unbypass the plugin at that at the drop of the section. That was kind of a quick way to do it. Another would be, like you said, to route it to two different buses, or route everything to one bus and then just create two aux tracks, one that gets all the craziness and the other one that's just, plain Jane, so you didn't screw up your original mix.
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely like another way to do it, like which I have done, not necessarily within the context of that track, but within the other stuff that I worked on.
Yeah, and then you might have to automate just the mutes between those two buses. So the plain Jane one, no offense to you, Jane, just mutes, and then the crazy one unmutes right at that moment where you want to hear it. Nice thing about that is you can take the new crazy version of your sub mix and easily adjust the volume level on that aux fader so that you can make sure that it transitions into that section. It doesn't lose energy or get too loud or whatever.
Yeah.
OWC is your one-stop shop for flexible drive storage and connectivity solutions for your studio. The Mini Stack STX for your Mac Mini adds 2 additional drives over a universal SATA HDD SSD bay and an NVMe M.2 PCIe SSD, plus 3 additional Thunderbolt USB-C ports. The OWC Thunder Bay 4 chassis, built like a tank, gives you 4 hot-swappable 2.5-inch RAID configurable drive bays, plus an extra Thunderbolt 3 jack for daisy chaining up to 5 devices. Or check out the OWC Gemini Thunderbolt 3 dock with 2 RAID configurable drives and 7 ports of connectivity, including a front-side SD card reader, 1 gig Ethernet, 2 USB 3.2 ports, a dedicated display port, and an additional backward-compatible Thunderbolt port. Get your studio connected with the Mini Stack STX, Thunder Bay 4, and Gemini Thunderbolt 3 dock at macsales.com/rockstars. Use the custom link in our show notes because it's a great way for you to help support this podcast. So thanks, Rockstars. All right, so let me jump forward. You still got a little bit of time for us?
Oh, yeah. All
right, groovy. So many things to just give a shout out to. In Ozone, again, you've got the Exciter, which well, let's do the speed answers on some of these ones here. So Exciter is basically adding distortion at different frequency ranges to the track, right? Parallel distortion.
I mean, it's just adding harmonic distortion to whatever part, whatever band that you want, and it's doing that through different styles, which also still calls back to like hardware emulation. So like tubes, triode, diode,
right,
tape, like all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So you can distort the crap out of things, or you can just give it a subtle kind of crunch or whatever.
You can, exactly. Like if you want to put a little bit, you can. You want to put a lot, you can. I like to think about it like adding spices to food.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to harmonic distortion, like you can put a lot and then it's like, whoa, this is a zingy track I got right here. This is it. And then you can like make it really subtle, where it's like, oh, that's tasteful.
That's pretty
good.
A
little bit of some tape saturation on the low end. Get a little bit of that like tape flutter you get, like when you get like a lot of signal, like hitting actual tape.
Yeah,
that. Very tasteful. And very good. I noticed it.
And that dish is served, and it's like the size of a silver dollar on your plate with like drizzled fancy stuff, and you pay like 5 times as much for it.
Exactly.
All right. And then, so of course, what's cool is iZotope makes it so that I think you can band pass each of those. So you can excite the top end, but not excite the low end if you want, and stuff like that. So you really can control the sound. Now, I think that stuff sometimes it can make me feel like my head spins a little bit when I think about mastering. It's like, oh, there's so many things to try and adjust, and I'm not sure. But what's good to remember that this tool is ready for just using on an individual track. Like it doesn't, you can just throw this on one particular overdub or sound and really dial it into like, that sounds cool. And it reminds me of a great gear designer, guitar player, and amp builder, Obad Khan in St. Louis, a buddy of mine. He taught me, like when I first heard his guitar tone, I was like, oh my God, I saw him play a show. I was like, that's the most incredible guitar sound I've ever heard, and it was like his Strat through his AC30, and he knew all the inner workings of the amp. And he talked about why the distortion sounds so good with that particular rig that he was using. And he said that the secret was that the guitar breaks up in the high frequencies, but it doesn't break up in the lows. So all the notes and the chords sound full as they're crunching and coming through. And I was like, mind blown moment at that point. But I think about, how you could dial in the exciter to do that kind of stuff. You can break up the highs, but leave the lows clear if you want to, or vice versa.
Exactly.
All right. So moving on next, imager. What is it?
Imager. Stereo imaging and separation. So, if you want kind of within the same thing that we were just talking about, like with the exciter, like if you want to open up the high end a little bit, you can essentially add or take away imaging by separating specifically that band. So
what's imaging? You're talking about how wide the left and right stereo field is, right?
Like how wide they would be. So you're kind of introducing like phase manipulation, if you will, to create the illusion of, having a wider or more narrow signal.
Yeah.
So like with doing, like you can just do that across, I'm pretty sure four, if not 5 bands, like within imager. And you can increase, like, you can further increase like the stereo imaging, which would be making it wider, or decrease it and then having it, be in the middle. So for example, like within like, electronic music, like what a lot of people tend to do, like when using the imager, is go within the low end and like where you're essentially just hearing like, the subs of your bass, and then like, the presence, the initial fundamental presence of the kick, and then they're just dragging that in the middle. So like, it could really just punch and lock in, and like you're not getting any weird other stereo bits like to what would just be your low end.
So right? In other words, turning the imager all the way down so that the low frequencies are totally mono.
Exactly.
So that all speakers are working together at the same time. It's not fighting each other, right?
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly like that.
And then so a way to think about something like the Imager Rockstars is, if you've ever like done your mix and you're so proud of it, you think it's so great, and then you play some record and you're like, oh my God, why does this record sound like bigger than life, 3D, and wrap around my head and sound so huge? It's the widening, it's the imaging, that's part of it. So definitely worth checking out. Spectral Shaper, what is that one all about?
Spectral Shaper. So that one is interesting. So like let's say there's like certain parts of the tone of like a certain range of like, a part of your track that, you just kind of want to lock in, and like you kind of want it to gel together. It's almost like, and this is one of like those weird ones where like, explaining it is a lot. This
is some kind of Haitian voodoo or something, is it?
Not that. So it's essentially like kind of tightening things up. So like there's less spectral variety. So like you can tighten things up, or you can leave them loose and like, kind of a little bit more hairy, but that's not the best explanation of how to use it. It's not within my arsenal.
Is it a dynamic thing or something? Or
it's also a dynamic thing too. So it's a lot of things at once. And like you can either, like, let's say like you have hi-hats that are really harsh and like they're really like bright within your mix.
Yeah.
You can use that tool and then bring it back in so that they're less harsh and that they're sitting within the mix, but without necessarily adjusting like, things on like a large level.
Oh, that's great.
If that makes sense. That's like the really common use case, at least for me, that I would think about using it. But
okay, cool. So yeah, that's one of the big challenges about approaching things in mastering. You're like, if the S's are too harsh, or if the hi-hat or if that tambourine is killing me, can I adjust it still? Or am I like actually adjusting the whole mix in a way I didn't like? And so it's cool to know that might help out. All right. And then let's keep jumping forward. Match EQ. What do we do with that thing?
Match EQ. So that's another thing, like with having like a reference track, and then, being able to get the EQ curve, kind of similar to what we were talking about, like with Audio Lens, but just more focused on EQ, and like you can just get an EQ curve from something else, or like from the presets, and then have that be put on your track, so you can get similar tones.
Okay, so if we're in Ozone and we're gonna use Match EQ, do we have to drag and drop some other file onto it first, or do we go get
so you would have it learn
from somewhere?
Right. So you would have it learn the other track, and then you would use Match EQ to match the EQ.
So it's almost like it learns it, and then you save it as this preset,
right,
kind of setting, and then you can just open it up in there. Okay. All All right, cool. Then in the master section, there's even cool stuff there. This one is so useful, especially when you're mastering and you're trying to decide, am I actually making this better or worse? I feel like when we're mixing, we're thinking about making things better or worse, but when we're mixing, there's like a much wider playing field of like anything goes. If you like it, it's good, you know? In other words, you can change a sound. You can just be like, that's cool. It's different, whatever. It's louder, it's softer. Who cares? We're just balancing it against other things. But when you're mastering, I feel like it's this, like you have all this pressure that you're like, I got to make this whole thing better and I better not make it worse. So gain match, talk about how the gain match feature in the master section of Ozone is our best friend.
Gain match. So within having gain match, right? So like, let's say like you have, or not, let's say, I mean, like that's exactly what it is. Like you have like your reference and, you know, you're working off of your reference or you're working with like the original file. And like, you know, you can essentially have since let's say like you got your original recording, like that you're working with and that you want to get to the final result that you're using Ozone, like you're using Ozone. You
got your mix and you're trying to accomplish a master.
Exactly. And you're trying to accomplish that master. You can have, you know, the gains match. So like there's not this perceived like, oh, wow, like all of a sudden, like, you know, the high end just opened up. Like when I went back to like listen to the other track listen to your original reference track that's on your other
I'm
channel.
You to sleep. I love it, man. This is great. I'm going to wear you out, man. This is great. Thank you for doing this.
No, keep me to it. I mean, I need this, so it's all good. You know, with gain match, you're essentially just able to have them at the same level so that you're not introducing like any perceived like gaps like within like the frequency spectrum. So like if you're really trying to get your mix to sound like something else, then you can just make sure like throughout the whole process that your mix, despite, you know, it being at a different loudness, is actually getting closer to that other track.
Right. So for example, we are easily fooled. So if something's a little louder, our ear thinks it sounds better. So we're making all these changes in Ozone, using all these different plugins in there. And then we can start to lose sight. Like, is this actually better than the mix? Am I actually, you know, like if you're mastering this for somebody else, you don't want to turn in something and be like, I did it. And then they're like, this sounds like shit, man. My mix sounded better than this. So gain match means that your original track going into Ozone, it'll match the output with all these plugins to that input level so that you're comparing apples to apples, you know, and it's like, here's the same volume at the output, but with all these changes that you made. Now, of course, when we print the master and we also want it to actually be louder, then we turn gain match back off again.
So the gain match would be for the reference track coming in, right? So like, you know, that's like your track adjacent to like what you're actually working on, like to your mix, right?
I see. So you can use a reference track, but you can also use the track you're working on right now.
Right, exactly.
But you can use an external reference track as well. That's what you're saying. Okay, cool. So now wait, will you hear the external reference track and the one you're mastering right now, or am I mixing this up?
So you can, like that's an option, but it's, you know, it doesn't have to be that way.
Okay. Yeah. All right, cool. All right, well, let's move on then. There's also codec and dither. We're getting real nerdy now, but what are those useful for? You know, you're out of your league there?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as far as like explaining like resolution and like, you know, what file types to use when, and like, you know, what would be presented on like different digital streaming platforms like versus others, you know, that's like another really deep part of audio that I know for a fact I am not going to do it justice. So I'm not even going to touch it.
All right. Well, I'll just throw it out there as my understanding of it. Rockstars, the codec is like, if you want to know this final version, this master you're creating, if you're like, I wonder what this is going to sound like when it's converted to an MP3, because like when I export it from the mastering software, I'm going to, of course, export it as like 44:1, 16-bit or a high resolution, but you're like, I just want to make sure it also sounds great on a streaming platform as an MP3 or something like that. So you can turn on the codec, I think, and hear the audio through those conversions. And then dither, I don't know what to say about dither. Dither's been around for ages. I still don't quite know. I think you just need to turn it on and off and see if you like one better than the other. Do you ever feel like the time that you've spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take you years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Listen to this quote from one of our students, David. Quote, "Absolutely the most informative and helpful block of information and mentoring on the mix process that I've ever been a part of. That was like sitting behind a mix engineer for years, watching and picking up tips along the way, but condensed into a 6 to 7 hour session." Close quote. Look, I'm so confident that this will take your mixes to the next level that if you can't get a killer mix within 30 days, I'll give you a full refund, no questions asked. So if you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then go to ultimatemixingmasterclass.com and start now by checking out the free preview of the Ultimate Snare Mixing Trick. And I'll see you at the front row table of the Grammys. Cheers. All right, so we'll wrap up here, but some of the other apps that we didn't talk about, Neutron, Nectar, Vocal Synth, Insight is cool. That's just a really great metering app that you can use, metering plugin if you really want to know what's going on with your mix. And where did it go? Also Stutter Edit. Some of those great DJ things. There was one of your tracks where I wanted to ask you if you were using that, but maybe it was just you playing drums. River was one of your tracks. It's got great drum and bass parts, and it almost sounded like you're using Stutter Edit, which is, I think that was originally designed by BT for, and then picked up by iZotope.
Yeah, so Stutter, well, I guess, I'll just talk about Stutter Edit. So it was the most recent version was co-created with BT, really dope plugin. It's essentially just like, a suite again with, like beat placement manipulation, but then also like time-based effects in there. So like if you wanted to have like a really weird flange or chorus swell, like you could do that all like within Stutter Edit, play like in a MIDI note and then like have that tracked or have that played in like at a certain time in your track, and then through automation you can enable and disable the plugin to have a certain desired effect.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a couple instant cool effects without having to build a whole bunch of stuff, right?
Exactly.
And then, if you're playing something back, just being able to hit keys, and it's almost like you're remixing your track at the same time. And
that's exactly what it's like. You're essentially just like introducing like, all these crazy different nuanced bits and edits, like, to your track that would otherwise, if you tried to do it the normal way, would take you a long time. Yeah. Unless like, you're the Skrillex, like where you're just going in and like, able to like the back of your hand and like you just do everything that you want to do. But,
Well, it reminds me, Rockstars, if you've ever played around on your iOS app, your iPhone or whatever, and then they'll have like a mixer section and you can just touch the pad and it's like filters and delays and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Stutter Edit is kind of the built-in version for your DAW that does all that stuff, where you can just hit MIDI keys and get these instant remix things, and like beat juggling where it flips the beat around. And it's really fun. I mean, you can put it just on the drum mix, and all of a sudden you're remixing your drum part and getting some cool things.
Really cool. Yeah, and as far as like the other plugins, just to like, fly through them, Neutron, general mixing suite. So, you got your compressor, EQ, saturation, which is, exciter, and then your gate. And then you would just be able to process sound within that. Also has an assistant portion to it as well. And like with its most recent, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, it's actually just clicking to me for the first time going through this. So you're super helpful. Ozone is like our mastering suite. Neutron is our mixing suite.
Exactly, and that's how they're paired. I mean, within the way they work, they're similar, just not the same because they're for different purposes. And yeah, I mean, Neutron's really cool. Just being able to like work on your tracks individually, but then also have them talk to each other because of the iZotope ecosystem. Like if you have like a guitar track and then you got like some like your vocal like submix or like your group. You can find out like where like your guitar track or your vocal track might be masking over each other, and then have that visually represented within Neutron on either instance, and then attenuate or take away.
Yeah, adjust it. If you're on the guitar track, you could adjust it there, and it's adjusting everywhere. Exactly. And if you're on the master, you could be adjusting there, and it's adjusting the guitar. Think about it like this, Rockstars. Neutron is sort of like a plugin. You can just use it individually. You could just use an EQ or a compression, or the trash and punch mode is great too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? So you can start to distort stuff just on a track by itself, but you can also put it across all your tracks and put it across the stereo bus. And then imagine the plugin itself stepping out and sitting in the chair with you, and it looks at your whole mix and goes, oh, well, your problem's over here in this bass track, and so then it kind of makes the adjustment for you. So that's cool stuff. But these are all so deep, and it's great because when you get into them, you got to give yourself that time of messing around with them. And again, you have the automatic modes and you just dial it back a little bit, or you put in the time to sit there and play around with it until you really understand what all these features do. And I think Audio Lens comes with Neutron as well, right? So you can go create these profiles around some of your favorite music.
So another portion of that too is with using Audio Lens and then also using Neutron. Like, let's say there's like a distorted, kind of tone that you're hearing in like, some rock record. Like, for example, like you can go in, use Neutron or get the target curve from, or like the data from Audio Lens, and then bring that in to your DAW, like into your session, and then take that tone. And then, from there, you'll get like a similar, distorted tone, like with using Neutron.
All right,
like,
cool.
You got the exciter, saturation, punch, like all that stuff that you can have translate into the audio track that you're working with.
Awesome, man. Awesome. All right. So like last ones quickly, the lightning speed. Nectar is
vocal production suite,
vocal stuff, right? So it's got the thing that blew me away is I didn't realize there was tuning in there as well.
Yeah. So there is. And now it's a little less than like what it used to be, as far as like there is like, the auto tune feature that's like the first thing in the chain, like always. Mm-hmm. Like I don't even think you can move it around. So, if you wanted to like make your own scale, like for like, having like the notes like snaps of the grid, you can adjust the strength, you can adjust the formant as well, which is definitely really cool. And then when you buy Nectar 3 Plus, then you also get Melodyne as well. So like if you want to go in, with the actual like isolated vocal sample itself before you're adding all the processing and all that stuff, you can, use one of the best tools to edit the pitch.
Right on.
Or correct it. Yeah.
Melodyne's great. All right. So then two other things I'll give a shout out to there was discovering the auto level mode, which we were talking about. It actually will kind of, instead of compression, it'll actually kind of automatically adjust levels between different lines and make sure that they're more consistent. And then the unmask feature. So one of the big challenges is like, I can't hear the vocals. I built this whole mix and I can't hear the vocals at the end. So the unmask, again, it goes back and talks to the other tracks and says, let's adjust some things and make a little more space for the vocal, right?
Yeah.
How you doing on time? We're almost done.
Oh, no, I'm good. Yeah.
All right, cool. Vocal synth. Tell us what that is.
Vocal synth is your vocal distortion powerhouse. You want to have your vocal sound like they were coming out of a talk box that was like being routed through like an orange amp or something like that. Like by all means, go for it. Like you'll be able to get that tone. If you want to have, your vocals sound robotic and sound like, they're coming through, like essentially what I'm getting at is there's a bunch of different profiles and different ways to like have your vocals be manipulated.
Yeah.
And you can even, use them the way that you would a talk box and like, have MIDI play in, and then like you can have that as like a supporting harmony to whatever like your main vocal line is.
You had one of your tracks was "What's on Your Mind." Again, we were talking about that before. And then one of my notes was, how did you create the bridge talk box sound? Were you using that or something like that to create sounded like you had, and then like, I know it does great vocoders as well, right?
It does. So you got your vocoder, and then like, you can also get like a talk box kind of tone too. And for What's on Your Mind, actually, I was using both. So I have like an MXR talk box that I have getting signal from my Juno 106. And I was like playing around like and soloing, and then like, just recording that into the Ableton session when I was making What's on Your Mind. And then for the vocals on the sides, like I have some like background vocals that I was using vocal synth on to get like, those high pitched tones, that I was messing around with in the mix. So it was fun. Yeah. It was fun. Definitely fun use case for vocal synth.
Cool stuff. We'll try and have some links in the show notes. I'm not sure how many of the tracks I'm talking about are released yet or not, but make sure, Joakeem, you share us the released link for it too, in case it's out by the time we do this.
Definitely will.
All right, so let's jump to the end here. We can just go straight to our closing question. This one is hypothetical though, and we get to take the Wayback Studio machine. Which maybe since you're 22, I don't know if we have to go too far back. Maybe we're going back to 20. What did you say? 2016.
2016. Okay.
Yeah, we're going back. We're going back a little ways, and you find young Jaokeem, and you say, "Listen, dude, I know you've got your Acer laptop, and you're trying to figure this stuff out, but I want to give you some advice right now. Here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice do you want to go back and give yourself?" If you could.
What advice? I would just plainly say, don't be afraid of anything. Nothing is bigger than you. And just sit down and learn. There's nothing that's like, oh man, like I don't even want to learn about mastering. Like, that's going to be way too complicated, or like I don't even want to learn about compression. That's going to be way too complicated. Just sit down and learn it. Experiment. There's nothing, there's truly nothing in this world that's like too beyond you. Saying I mean, even though I literally just said that about like dithering when explaining ozone earlier, but like there's truly nothing else that's beyond you. Like if you're the beginner, if you have the goal of being the rock star, in order for you to get there, you got to put in the time, you got to do the work. And that work that you have to do is okay. If you want to learn guitar, learn your scales, like you don't have to learn it in a week. You don't got to learn all 12 like in a week, or you don't got to learn all the modes in a day. But, take your time, learn what you need to learn, and just enjoy the journey of being an artist, because you're always going to be learning. I mean, hearing Jacob Collier talk about Steve Vai figuring new things out in the studio. Like there's like this video like of Jacob just talking about the different people like within his life. And like that to me, like I'm thinking about Steve, I'm like, that is the guy, that's the Don, like he knows all he needs to know. But he's talking about finding new things within music theory to this day.
That's awesome.
Like within thinking about progressions, like voice leading, all those different things. And that just re-cemented the fact that we are forever learners in this process. So that's what I would say. That's what I would say to 16, 15-year-old like Jaokeem. Just, relax, sit down. Nothing is bigger than you. You'll be able to tackle it. Just give it time.
That's such a great quote, man. I wrote that down. Nothing is bigger than you. Dude, thank you so much for hanging with us. Thanks for going the extra mile on the podcast today. And thanks for letting me just beat you up with all those iZotope plugins and questions. It's really fun to go through it and just be able to talk about all of it. And, again, even for me, just rediscovering all this stuff and knowing. Now I'm like, when we're done, I'm going to hang up and run down to the studio and go like, I got to go try that thing out, like we all do. So Rockstars, thank you for listening. Jaokeem, where can the Rockstars go learn more about you? Where would you like them to go check out your music? I mean, we'll have links in the show notes as well, if you don't have a website up for us yet. But if there's anything you want them to go check out, let us know.
My name, like my full name, Joakeem Gaston, has like, it's pretty powerful on the SEO. So you look me up anywhere, you'll find me, whether that's like Instagram, Twitter, hopefully Spotify. By
Not
then,
a lot of imposters out there.
Yeah, not a lot.
That's
not
great.
a lot. I'm the only Joakeem Gaston as far as I know. So, you'll find me.
That's
You'll
great.
find me
That's great.
Wherever you need to look.
You might find some other Elijah Shaws, but I don't think you're going to find a ton of other Lid Shaws. So it's good.
The Liz Shaw.
the Joakeem Gaston. All right. Well, dude, thank you so much for hanging with us, Rockstars. Again, thank you for listening. And Joakeem, I look forward to seeing you around the studio or at the next conference we go to.
For sure.
All right, man. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our awesome sponsors who help make this episode possible: OWC, Lewitt, Adam Audio, iZotope, and Spectra 1964. And remember, at iZotope.com/rockstars, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plugin purchase. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, then please check out our sponsors using the link in our show notes, because it's a great way to help support this show. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars, Vlad Weselchenko and Braden Stremming, for additional podcasts and video production. Thanks so much for listening, Rockstars, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.